Okay, and whoops, give me 1 second. Okay. All right, and okay, welcome. I hope you can see me and hear me. Today is a very special day. It is Beis Iyar, the Yom Huledes of our Rebbe, the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe. So today we are going to go a little bit to speak a little bit about that, about the Rebbe Maharash, and that's going to be today's themes, as you know. So you can check out your questions. Make sure you're looking at your questions, the link that was sent on chabadyut.org/virtual. And there will be a raffle for this week's Cheder. Now we do owe 2 raffles. So we're going to be doing that shortly. Of course, that I'm talking about last week, because this week we're still going to give time. So we did have a very special raffle for last week, Shabbos Mevarchim, as well as we have for last week's Mesibas Shabbos and Benos for Shabbos Parsha Shmini. Now this week's raffle, there are 2 raffles this week. Of course, number 1 will be for the Mesibas Shabbos this past week, and for those that enjoyed a very, very geschmacke, magazine newsletter that Chabad put forward, and you can still get it if you didn't get it yet. Download it if you got the link. Should have got it emailed or on our broadcast, as well as we have it live printed at 711 Meadow Street. Okay, so that was for this week. The 2 raffles will be for Shabbos Parshas Tazrir Mitzvah Mesibas Shabbos Benos, as well as today's Cheder. There will be questions this week. And here it is, really gorgeous, and we made a really fun game inside for Mesibas Shabbos. You can still play those even though Shabbos is over. Okay, and bouncing right into it. As we mentioned, today is a very special day. Each Rebbe brought something unique and special. So although we know we do have 7 Rebbeim, but each of the 7 Rebbeim brought something very, very special that changed the way Chassidus is forever. And amazingly, our Rebbe kind of brought that all in together, as we will see momentarily. So the Rebbe's attitude was, interestingly, a bit of every Rebbe. Now, let's just start from the beginning. The Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, his wife was pregnant with, so I'm jumping, I think, to the last question, that it was actually the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek's youngest son, believe it or not, even though the Rebbe Maharash became Rebbe, it was actually his youngest son. The Rebbe Maharash was the Tzemach Tzedek's youngest son, and his mother was pregnant. Now, unfortunately, there was a massive fire in Lubavitch, and a lot of things burnt down. Interestingly enough, the Tzemach Tzedek's house shul did not burn down. However, because there was a lot of renovations happening, the Tzemach Tzedek expanded his house, and they started a new house. The idea was that for Kabbalas HaTorah on Shavuos, they were going to move into the new house. However, Rebbetzin Rivka decided, Rebbetzin his wife, Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka. Yes, so our Rebbetzins great-grandmother, Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka, the Tzemach Tzedek's wife, decided that she wanted to have this special child in the special new home. And this, of course, because, as I told you, perhaps one of the hints is that because Lubavitch was going to change forever, was going to be a whole new style, and Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka decided she would like to have the new baby in the new home. Now, like I mentioned to you, this is the Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka the first. So this is the Tzemach Tzedek's wife. It's pretty incredible that the Tzemach Tzedek and the Rebbe, very, very similar names, similar wives' names. Why is it stopping? Life. Okay, I'm not sure why we're on hold over here. Okay, I just hope it's. Just make sure. It looks like maybe it's stopping, so I'm just making sure that it's still working. I have a better idea.
This is good.
Okay, I'm not sure. It looks to me like it froze, but maybe it did not freeze. I'm not sure what's going on there. Regardless. Okay, so just trying to check if it's still going. All right, now the Rebbe that Tzemach, so the Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka. Just let me know if it's still working on the chat over there. Okay, so Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka decides that she will have her baby in the new house. Now it was a new house; it didn't have any furniture inside. They just had one weird type of bed. In the olden days when they did the matzah, they actually sifted the matzah. They really did it from scratch. So you couldn't just go to a matzah bakery and get your matzah over there. You actually had to, you picked up flour, and you brought the flour home, you grinded it, and then you had to sift it. So they had what they called a sifting bed. Literally, and every year they would buy a new bed. It was just like, imagine just a wooden kind of bench top, a very low, looks like a bed, but just a wooden flat thing. And that's what they had. So amazingly, the Rebbetzin said she wants to have the baby in this new house. They brought quickly some hay and made it padded and made it nice and put it out some sheets. And that's where she had her baby on Beis Iyar, Tuf Kuf Tzadik Dalid. Now this was a very significant year. It's in one of the questions. I'm speaking a little bit out of order, but it's in one of the questions. Why is it a special year? Because it was exactly 100 years after the Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, revealed himself. Chassidus started going in full boom. So the Baal Shem Tov, if you remember, for a long time, he did not want to reveal himself. He was very quiet. He was being taught by Eliyahu Hanavi's teacher himself, Achia Hashiloini, and he said, "You must reveal yourself." The Baal Shem Tov said, "I don't want to. I'm too small, like all of our Rebbeim, like Shlomo HaMelech, like David HaMelech, like Shaul HaMelech, like Moshe Rabbeinu himself. They all didn't want to do it." And Achia Shalini said, "Well, the only reason why I'm teaching you is for other Yidden. If you don't reveal yourself, I'm going to stop teaching you," which was what happened until the Baal Shem Tov agreed. And that happened in the year Tav Tzadik Dalid. 100 years later exactly, the Rebbe Maharash is born. Why is that significant? Because the Rebbe Maharash had that whole Baal Shemske, what we call the Baal Shemske Hanhaga, which means he acted like very Baal Shemske. In other words, there are certain miracles that are miraculous, but they happen through nature, right? Something happens, you get a bracha, it works out, so you can't always see the miracle. What we call a Baal Shemske Hanhaga, a Baal Shemske behavior, means Alachatchila, you see the massive miracle. Here's just one awesome story of one of these incredible Baal Shemske Hanhagas. One time, as we're going to find soon, it's again in one of the questions, one of the major activities. How did the Rebbe Maharash help Russian Jewry? Now, unfortunately, pogroms were very, very popular. A pogrom, if you don't know, or a program, if you've been listening to, when Zaidi was young, number 3, and not a program, but a pogrom. Literally, and we're going to save that information because it's going to be in, I think, in next week's or in 2 weeks' Masib story. But a pogrom, unfortunately, means a bunch of goyim would come to a Jewish town and do whatever they want, wreak havoc, break into Yiddish houses, take what they want, sometimes really hurt people, if not worse, and do terrible, terrible things. And for a long period in Russia, of course it was considered illegal, but depending on the period, and unfortunately Yidden suffered from this a lot, pogroms happened really unfortunately throughout Jewish history. And Baruch Hashem, as the Rebbe would always comment, how close we are to Mashiach, that today not only the governments are against the Yidden, they help us out. They now protect our shuls, or sometimes police guards, around Jewish communities. So Baruch Hashem, as we come closer to Mashiach, the army, the government, the police help Yidden. They help us go to school. They provide crossing guards. They provide protection. But in the olden days, it was quite different. So even the government themselves could care less. They were actually quite satisfied that these wild goyim would come into Yiddish shtettelach and literally sometimes burn the place down, rob, hurt. It was this disaster. And the Rebbe Marash, one of his major things that he helped, don't forget that Rebbeim weren't just spiritual leaders. They were like real kings of Yidden. They didn't just teach Torah, they also saved Yidden, and each Rebbe did in his own unique way. If you might know, the Alter Rebbe, he got tons of money for his wedding. Do you know what he did with it? His father-in-law was very rich. And he said, I'll take the money. He's making a threat to his father-in-law. I'll take the present on one condition. Yes, that you let me do whatever I want with it. Yeah, he knew the Alter Rebbe was a very smart person. And he had no doubt that the Alter Rebbe would use it and invest it in amazing ways to become very rich. And he said, sure. And he took all that money and he literally started building a shtetl and building businesses so Jews should have businesses. A lot of Rabbeim, you know about this or not, all of them physically helped Yidden, and a lot of them was to create businesses, to buy farms, and they were very much encouraged. Now, the Rebbe Maharash, unfortunately, what his task was to push it, save Yidden, and argue with the government. And he always went in a way of, like we said, about Shemske Hanhaga. In what two words do we find that? One of our questions today. What was his famous saying? The Lechatchila Ariber. The Rebbe says, the world says if you can't go under, then go over. But I say go over in the first place. Go Lechatchila in the first stance, go over. What does that mean? In other words, going over and going under. In other words, a lot of time we go under. In other words, if we have to get something done, we say, okay, how could I do this? Oh, but this is not going to work out. What are all the problems that I might encounter? Should I really be doing this? And then, okay, if I can't do it, if I don't figure it out, then I'll just do it anyways. The Rebbe Manash said, why you have to make calculations? Just go do it. And that was his attitude through his whole life. He would just, when something needed to be done, am I going to do it like this? Should I argue? And what's the best way to get it done? And fine, I'll do it. And I'm going to tell you how it's very, very practical in our lives. Now, most of the terrible maskilim were basically non-fruma Yidden that wanted to watch and see that Torah and mitzvahs get destroyed. They hoped that one day every Yid would act like a goy. And they were called maskilim because they made themselves very intellectual. Maskil actually means like intellectual, like we're smarter than everyone. And there was one of these terrible maskilim that lived in the city. It was a very chassidish city. It was called Zhitomer. And he and his friends made great efforts to bring what we said, to make sure that people don't believe in Hashem and into the hearts and minds of these pure Jewish Russian Yidden. Now, he knew that if he was going to meet the Russian Minister of Education and convince him how important this was, you have to tell Jews to stop wasting their time with some ancient scrolls. They got to be, right? They got to learn subjects that are at hand and science and forget about the whole Torah. And they just got to know the reality that it's a science that creates the world, blah, blah, all these shtusim. And of course, the Russians would be more than happy to instill this and to make gzeiros against the Jewish yeshivas and chedarim. Now, he knew that he wanted to meet the Russian Minister of Education. There was a minister for each area, so one's called education, right? And he knew that if there's a decree, then the Russian government can force the Yidden to follow the Maskilim's way of thinking. He therefore made a very great effort to arrange to meet him in order to convince him to force all the Yidden to follow their ways. And of course, this very special minister, now his efforts paid off. After trying very, very hard, he finally got an audience with an interview with the minister. Ha! Okay, this sounds very interesting. As the minister reads the letter, yes, I want the, oh yes, make problem for Jewish education. Very good, very good. And as soon as he hears this Russian maskil goes marching, gets on a train, who was very cold, Russian cold, very excited, going to meet minister, and he gets onto the train to Petersburg. 3 very rich Yidden who unfortunately were not following their Nefesh HaElikis, and they obviously lived the life of Lechatchila Arunter, Lechatchila always going under and always worrying about what people say, and finally they dropped the Torah away. They were waiting. Petersburg was basically like the capital. It was even greater than the ACT. It was even greater. It was like where like all the top people lived. In fact, for Yidden weren't really, a regular Yid was not even allowed to live there. Now there were some very rich, influential Yidden that unfortunately were giving all this money to his maskilim that they should be successful, and they waited to greet him as soon as he arrived. So the 4 of them now proceeded to the special ministry offices where they will meet the Minister of Education. Surrounded by his 3 supporters that were standing all proud, the maskil walks in and he clears his throat and he's ready. He has prepared this speech for so long. He knew exactly what he was saying. He showed it to 10 people to make sure that whatever he sounds so convincing. And he knocks on the door, and this minister had, even though he was excited, he had 0 patience for anybody, especially for a Yid. Okay, get to the point, let's go. Get to the point. And here's this maskil, and the weirdest thing happened. As he opened his mouth, his tongue started hanging out. His tongue literally hanging over his entire chin. And he tried to roll it back in to say, gosh, he was trying to forget his speech, but no, this is the only chance he had to wreck the Yidden. He tries to roll his tongue back. And it falls out again. He goes crazy, tries to roll it back in. And he faints on the floor, obviously, right then. The minister, what's this crazy trick? Get this guy out of here. And I think you should bring him to the hospital, I'm just saying. So, of course, they rushed this maskil to the hospital, and they tried, all the doctors, they literally had to cut open his mouth to try to see if they could get his tongue back in, but the operation did not work at all. And finally, the maskil died in terrible pain. Now, as you know, as we said, during this time, what was happening in another city? In Lubavitch, the Rebbe Maharash, who was the leader of the Yidden, and of course, did everything he could for Yidden, spiritually and physically. At this time, he went to his father's oil. And exactly at the time, when this maskil walks into the office, guess who was in the oil of the Tzemach Tzedek? The Rebbe Maharash. And the Rebbe Maharash is davening. All of a sudden, he starts laughing. And he's with together his son-in-law. The son-in-law that married his daughter. And the Rebbe turns to his son-in-law next to him and he starts giggling. And his son-in-law is quite strange. Here the Rebbe Maharash is in the oil of the Tzemach Tzedek. He's usually extremely serious. He's actually usually crying because there's so much tzaddas. And all of a sudden he's smiling and he gives a little laugh. And he turns to his son-in-law in the middle of the oil and he says, why? But we find by the stories of the spies that when the spies spoke against the Eretz Yisrael, their tongues fell all the way out to their belly buttons. So he gives a smile. He says, why their belly buttons? I think the chin's enough. And with that, the chin's enough, and he made with his, that's it. And then he ended his davening, and the son-in-law, of course, didn't understand what the Rebbe Maharash was saying, or should I say better, what the Rebbe Maharash was doing, and exactly when he said that. This maskil's tongue didn't have to go to his belly button. The chin was enough to wreck the whole thing. And that's what I told you, that the Rebbe Maharash, his whole style, first of all, so we have, of course, miracles from all Rebbeim, and plenty of miracles from our Rebbe, and every Rebbe. But some of you like saw as in other words, something happened, and then someone passed away, or this or that. And sometimes there's literally open miracles. The Rebbe Maharash, that attitude of Lechatchila Ariber, and so that's what I told you. He was born 100 years after the Baal Shem Tov revealed himself, and that's connected because he had attitude was always Baal Shemska style. No worries. Let's move on. So I guess let's move on, guys. Okay. So then he was once playing with his cousins. He had a lot of cousins. In fact, he was born, and nieces and nephews. He was born, don't forget, he was the youngest child. So by the time he was born, he had plenty. He was born uncle. All of his oldest brother was already 30 years old. And by the way, they got married quite young then. The Rebbe Maharash himself got married, believe it or not, at 14 years old. And it was quite common. So his older brother is born. His older brother is already 30 years old. And he was born already with many cousins and more. He actually had much more nieces and nephews, and he used to play with them Shabbos. And one day he comes over and he says, "Oh, my cousin Rivka, I'm going to marry her." He was very, very, very young, a little child, and he was playing. And he said, "I'm going to marry cousin my niece." I think it's cousin, right? Rebetz and Rivka. They all laughed, but obviously, a few years later, well, interestingly, people thought it was nothing because he married his niece Rebetz Sterna. And unfortunately, in the middle of Sheva Bracha, she became very, very sick, and she passed away. So within a very short amount of time, he married her. Obviously, why these things happen, obviously, for whatever reason, this is what needed to happen. She had obviously a shlichus in life. And so, interestingly, the Rebbe Maharash was married twice. The first time was extremely short. He got married, like I said, in the age of 14 in the year 1848, Tafrei Ches, but she passed away literally middle of Shabbat. She got very sick, and a short while after she passed away. Now, this, interesting to kind of, I suppose, to strengthen the Rebbe Maharash, who was then not a Rebbe yet, of course. After each of the brothers got married, the Tzemach Tzedek built each of them a house and a shul. And by the way, as you might know, all of the Tzemach Tzedek's children became Rebbes. But interestingly enough, who became the Lubavitcher Rebbe? So when the Tzemach Tzedek, when the Rebbe Maharash got married, the Tzemach Tzedek actually, instead of building him a separate house, when his wife passed away, the Tzemach Tzedek built a piece of his own house for the Rebbe Maharash, and the Rebbe Maharash had permission. On one hand, I think this was to help the Rebbe Maharash get over his grieving for his wife that he just got married to. So he had a free license, a free passport to go into his father, the Tzemach Tzedek. Even though they were all sons of the Tzemach Tzedek, you couldn't just go in. The Tzemach Tzedek was, of course, still the Rebbe. So the Rebbe Maharash had a free pass to always go into the Tzemach Tzedek when he wanted. Now, of course, it's very significant that each one got their own shul, but of course, the Rebbe Maharash remains in his father's house because eventually he is going to take over his father. He is going to become, even though he was the youngest brother, he's going to become the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Now, about a year later, he gets married to his second wife on a very, very special day. Believe it or not, Yud Aleph Nissen. On Yud Aleph Nissen, the next year, Tafreish Tes, in 1849, he gets married to his second wife, the famous Rebbetzin Rivka. And interestingly, he continues to stay in the room that was attached, the house that was attached to the Tzemach Tzedek. And he continues to have a special relationship. And one day the Tzemach Tzedek calls the Rebbe Maharash in. And he says, just like the kings of Bnei Yisrael, they're anointed with oil. You remember that? You guys know that? It was a special oil that a king got anointed with. So the Tzemach Tzedek said that there's a spiritual oil. And with that, each Rebbe anointed the next Rebbe. With that, the Alter Rebbe anointed the Mittel Rebbe. And the Mittel Rebbe anointed my father-in-law, the Mittel Rebbe, anointed me. And I am anointing you. Obviously, this meant he was passing on the crown that when the Tzemach Tzedek's Nestalik. Now, interestingly enough, when the Tzemach Tzedek was Nestalik, he did not want to take on the Nesias. He had so many older brothers, and they were all great Talmidei Chachamim, and of course, it was a big argument who should be the Rebbe. Now, no one suggested necessarily the Rebbe Maharash. The Rebbe Maharash was, so to speak, known as the simple son. He would walk around with fancy suits. He would have white gloves. And I told you, if you remember, I told you earlier, the Rebbe had a bit of each type of Rebbe. So definitely, when the Rebbe, before the Rebbe came Rebbe, like when you looked at the Rebbe, he had a modern. The type of hat that Rebbe had was actually considered like a modern businessman hat. And the Rebbe sometimes with gray suits and even white gloves. And the Rebbe would even walk around with a newspaper. Now, wow, that would look very modern. The Rebbe would go in the street with a newspaper until someone realized that it was actually, the Rebbe wasn't looking at the news because it was always the same exact old newspaper. The Rebbe simply did not want to see the tamei and not sneistic things outside. So the Rebbe didn't make a show. What people going to say about me? He didn't want to see, didn't want to make a fuss, so he would walk around with a newspaper and make himself very simple. The Rebbe Maharash was very much like that. He was the youngest son, but he looked like a crazy. He walked around with a... Now one day a chassid was learning a sefer in Kabbalah. I believe it was called the Eitz Chaim, from Reb Chaim Vital, the student of the Arizal. We have a chassidish sefer called Eitz Chaim from the Rebbe Rashab, but I'm not talking about that. The Rebbe Rashab is the Rebbe Manash's son. So the Eitz Chaim, so he had a question in this Kabbalah sefer from Reb Chaim Vital, I believe. That I think it was the Eitz Chaim. And he went to all the brothers. It was such a genius question, a very, very difficult question. None of the brothers were able to answer the question. Now what does he do? He went to all the older brothers. Finally, he decides, all right, let me see what's going on. He walks by and he sees a light, a candle still flickering 2 in the morning in the Rebbe Maharash's house. So the chassid peeks inside, and to his shock, he sees, yes, the Rebbe Maharash is holding open the Eitz Chaim. He was so excited. He runs to the Rebbe Maharash. He couldn't contain this, and he knocks on the door. Maybe the Rebbe Maharash could help me. He wasn't known as the Rebbe Maharash then. He was just known as the Maharash, because the Tzemach Tzedek gave out Rosh Tevises. So each one, and he knocks on the door, and it's waiting. He's waiting 1 minute, 2 minutes. Finally, the door opens. He walks inside, and of course, what does he see all over the Rebbe Maharash's table? Newspapers. He sees all these newspapers and just junk all over the place, and he goes, He says, what do you want? He says, I have a shayla, I have a question in the Eitz Chaim. He says, what do you want from me? I can tell you the news. That's what I can tell you. He says, Rebbe, I saw exactly what was going on a minute ago. I peeked in. And if you don't give me the answer, I'm going to tell everyone what I saw. Now, I can't say he kept his promise. The Rebbe Menashe said, okay, I'll give you the answer. And he gave him this brilliant answer. But this chassid could not contain himself, and he told the whole Lubavitch what happened. And of course, then they started recognizing the greatness of the Rebbe Maharash. Now, unfortunately, the Rebbe Maharash was the Rebbe for a very, very short amount of time. The Rebbe Maharash was begashmius not well, and he was very, very careful in time. If you looked at this Shabbos' Mesib Benas article, we were speaking about Sfiras Omer counting time, and the Rebbe Maharash Mamish counted every minute. His Chassidus was quite, when he used to speak Chassidus, was quite shortish. He was finished Shachris, Chassidus, Shachris, everything was done already by 8 a.m. He had a very, very short amount of time to be Rebbe, but he accomplished tremendous things. He became Rebbe at the age of 31 and passed away at 48. So that's only about 17 years of being Rebbe. Now, it took, but the last few years, like we said, he worked very hard and he was successful in stopping these pogroms. Like I told you, he was Chalachatchila Aribra. He went to the government once and he said, if you don't force the goyim to stop the pogroms, I'm going to tell everyone all over Europe. I'm going to send letters all over Europe and even America to tell everyone what's happening. Now the Russian government, although they were big as their name Russia, they were big Rishayim. They always wanted to make themselves look good. So they were very upset when the Rebbe Maharash said this. They screamed at him, "Are you threatening us? You go tell the government, that's a spy. You're spying and we're going to kill you. You know, you can get the death penalty for spying. You're threatening us? So, of course, the Rebbe Maharash, instead of, what should I say, what should I do? I told you he's l'chatchila Rebbe. He goes, I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling you what I'm going to do. It's worthwhile that you take care of the Yidden. And eventually, Baruch Hashem, before he passed away, he was able to accomplish, and the government had a massive ban on pogroms, and it was finally, it sounds wacky, but it became finally illegal for pogroms to happen. Now, before I continue, just a few lessons. First, I want to show you a beautiful, beautiful clip. I hope this works. And a beautiful, beautiful clip of the children joining in a rally singing the Rebbe Maharash's Niggin. And it's a very old rally, and probably one of the first. It's probably the Rebbe Maharash's Yartzeit Yud Gimel Tishrei, I'm imagining. We'll see the date. I think we'll show you the date. So, unfortunately, it starts from the middle, so I'm going to start. You start with me. And let's start the first half of the Niggin, because it only rolls into the high part of the Niggin. So, ya 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 ya, hey ya 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 ya, sing along. Hey ya 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 ya, hey ya ya ya. Okay, now let's get into the video. Okay. And the niggin of lechatchil ariber. One of our questions is, how do we refer to this niggin of lechatchil ariber? Of course, then you see the Rebbe, stopping the spall. Let's just go march further. Before I tell you right? So we said, what's the name of the niggin? That was one of the questions. It has three different niggunim. Either, obviously, the Rebbe Marash's niggin. That's number one. Or number two, niggin lechatchil ariber. So that's the second name. It has the name of the Rebbe Manasseh niggin lechatchil ariber. And ain't svei drai fear, because the old way, one of the ways to sing it is I la 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 ya, ain't svei drai fear, I la 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 la, ain't svei drai fear, and sometimes either the Rebbe would literally show like this 10, the Rebbe Mamish showed that like that, or you could just see the Rebbe wanting to continue. And the Chassidim knew to sing us 10 times. And maybe because we have actually 10, Chassidus explains we have 10 different parts to us. I won't get into that now. But in other words, like Lechatchil Rebbe should take us over completely. And literally they would sing it 10 times. And literally they would do that for 10 times. Now, one time the Rebbe Maharash's son, who was that? The younger son again. Interesting, sometimes I guess like Shlomo Melech and many other cases, and David Melech, it's not always the oldest. And here, in fact, the Rebbe Marash had 2 boys, and we said 1 daughter. You might know that story. Maybe get into that soon. But his 2 boys was the Razah. Like I told you, the Tzemach Tzedek gave out Rosh Tevis for his children, his grandchildren. So the Razah, Reb Zalman Aaron, that was the Rebbe Maharash's actually older son, and the Rebbe Rashab. Now the Rebbe Rashab, unfortunately, was once drafted to the army, and the Rebbe Marash, of course, wasn't too worried. And in fact, at the end, so then they mamish sometimes forced you to go to the army. But of course, the Rebbe Rashab did not actually have to go. But he, of course, based on what the Baal Shem Tov taught us, and we said the Baal Shem, especially the Rebbe Marash, who had the Baal Shem Tov's attitude, he says we have to learn from everyone. And the fact that you were summoned to the army, of course, we have to learn a lesson, what we can learn a soldier. And the Rebbe Marash told him, you're still drafted to the army. Maybe not the Russian army, but the Eibishter's army. And he told the Rebbe Marash, told the Rebbe Rashab, you know what a soldier is? A soldier has no personal existence. His whole being and all of his time is the army. That's all matters to him. And every chassid is a soldier serving Hashem. So this is way before the Rebbe revealed to Hashem. This already, of course, talks of the Rebbe Maharash, that a chassid, his whole life is the Eibush, like a soldier. Amazingly, you know what the biggest scare of a soldier is? Not getting hurt. He's scared that he's going to mess the mission up. Because for a soldier, what matters right now is his mission, and that's what his whole life is. Just going to make sure we didn't... I know we still have to do the Sefer HaMitzvahs. So, of course, just to review some of the questions. What happened on Beis Iyar? Of course, you know that Rebbe Maharash was born. Now, something else did happen Beis Iyar. This is that you don't have to answer, but this is quite cool. Like I told you, the whole way of the Rebbe Maharash's attitude. Now, in the year Tafresh Mem, there was a very, very wicked politician that was working to pass terrible, terrible decrees to make life even harder for the Yidden. And we spoke about this. And of course, in Petersburg, he did whatever, of course, the Rebbe Marash did whatever he could to delay the verdict that this guy should not be able to pass this terrible decree. But the evil statesman, this is good for Mazarasha, and he got all the other evil pritzim and all the other ministers to push this decree to happen as soon as possible. And as much as the Rebbe Marash tried, he went home very distressed. He said a lot of kapitel Tehillim every single day, and he got a lot of chassidim involved. He worked very hard to stop. And he asked one very special chassid, his name was Rabbi Yisrael Chaikin, and along with another 2 chassidim, Reb Nachum Hurmant and Reb Leib Manasim. A few months later, on the Rebbe Maharash's birthday, Mazali Geiver, the Rebbe Maharash gets a telegram from Harav Chaikin. And the Rebbe Maharash was middle saying, similar to the words of Pada Vishalim, so the Rebbe Maharash was sitting in his office, and he was saying the Kapitelach Nun Dalit. Interesting, it's right before Kapitel Nun Hey Pada Vishalim, and similar to what the Alter Rebbe writes. And it says he was saying the words Ki mitzkol tzara hitzilani, for Hashem saves me from all type of decrees. All of a sudden, as soon as those words came out of the Rebbe Maharash and knocked on the door, someone came with a telegram, and the telegram said, L'chvoi kedusha of course of the Rebbe, the minister, the evil minister, suddenly died, and the terrible decree is no more. Baruch Hashem. That's all it said. And with that, boom. So something else happened. Beis Iyar. Many things happened, but of course the main answer is the Rebbe Maharash's birthday, the Tefillah of Tiferes to Tiferes. Now, what's the motto? What was the main saying of the Rebbe Marash? Well, if you want to go the long one, is that the world says if you can't go under, then try to go over. But I say, in the first place, go under. Or in the famous words, Lechatchila Ariber. What were the 3 names of the Niggin? We said that Rebbe Marash's Niggin, Lechatchila Ariber, and Ein Tzvei That I Fear. How did Rebbe Marash help Russian Jews? Do you remember? I'm not telling you. I hope you've been watching till now. The Rebbe Marash was born 100 years after what event? And what's the connection to his birth? How's this connected? So we said, who remembers? Yes, 100 years after the Baal Shem Tov revealed himself, and this is connected because the Rebbe Maharash had the Baal Shemske attitude, whereas by him was open miracles and he wasn't nispal from anything. The Rebbe Maharash was the Tzemach Tzedek's eldest son, true or false? What did the Rebbe Maharash say? We can learn from a soldier, right? A soldier has nothing, no time. His whole time is the army, and his whole life is his mission. Okay, now let's do, before we close, let's do the Sefer Mitzvahs. I know we have two more, two raffles for today. So today's very, very special Sefer HaMitzvahs is as follows. It is that we are not allowed to cheat during a sale. So when you make a sale, you sell something to a friend, you're not allowed to fraud another. In other words, whether you're a buyer or a seller, and you make believe you're selling something that's worth a lot, but it's really worth a little, you cheat on the companies. Oh, this is a real Apple earphones, but it's not. Any type of cheat is not only dishonest, but it usher that you are not allowed to underpay. Even if the guy, well, it's not my fault. The guy didn't realize he's selling me such an expensive item for a few dollars. You are not allowed to underpay, and you are not allowed to overcharge. So whether you're a buyer, one may not underpay, you're not allowed to pay too little. And if you're a seller, you're not allowed to overcharge the normal price. Okay, for Shabbos Bevarchim, as mentioned, you decide your prize. So the amount of time that you said, it's 50 cents for every minute you spend. So if you spend a half an hour, that is a whopping $50. $15. If you spend an hour, that's a whopping $30, etc., etc. And thank you. Close to 100 kids sent in their kapitlach. God bless all of you. Good on you. Hope you continue to daven and say, let's say a special kapitel while I make the raffle, while I'm mixing. I'll mix both bags now. So let's say Lam Natzeh together. And don't forget, give tzedakah, katzel mimaves, and to help all the Mikravas says a Geula. Lam Natzeh yang mizmar leDavid yancha dinoi b'yoim tzada yisagem Hashem Elohei Yaakov yishlach ezecha mikodesh umitzion yisadecha Yizkarka min chaysecha ve'oilas chayidash nasela yitin lecha chilva vecha v'chalat tzazcha yemalei Nedanu b'shuasecha v'shem Eloheinu nidgal Yimalei Adinai kamishal ezecha ati yadaiti kishi Adinai mishichai Yanei yomishmei kachay b'gevurei zeisha yeminei Eila v'recha v'yeila v'asusim v'anachnu v'shem Adonai l'naskir Heima kadu v'nafalu v'anachnu kamru v'nisoidat Adinai Hoshia Melech Yaneinu v'yohim kareinu. And let's now give some tzedakah, as we say, Gedoyla tzedakah shemikareves es hagiula. And for Shabbos Mevorchin, I'll have to check later how much you did, so I will not announce your prize right away. Just have to still check how much you did on the thing. But the winner is none other than, I have it in my hand. And it's, believe it or not, it goes to Tzipi Schmerling. Mazel Tov, Tzipi Schmerling. And for last week's Mississippi Shabbos and B'das, the winner goes to none other than Ari Rosenbaum. Mazel Tov, Ari. Good on ya. Okay, and just to wrap up our special Fabrengen, the Rebbe Maharash, his bris, as you might know, was actually pushed off, and something else happened amazingly on Beis Iyar. That maybe you should answer. I should have. There's one thing I skipped. That just a few other interesting facts. The Rebbe Maharash's bris, of course, was going to be early in the morning. The Tzemach Tzedek finished. But all of a sudden, the Tzemach Tzedek would not come out of his room. He was staying for a long time. And he came out with a lot of tears, but a shining face. And he came out, I think, at least twice. And he kept saying, don't worry, the bris is going to happen today. And his uncle said that when the crowd was getting very edgy, his uncle said, apparently he's busy with people more important than us. And finally, the Rebbe Marash came out. The Tzemach Tzedek came out. It was already 4 o'clock. The people were there since the morning. It was 4 o'clock, and they finally made the bris. And of course, they named the Rebbe Maharash. They named him Rebbe Shmuel. During the bris, one of his older brothers asked his father, the Tzemach Tzedek, "Did you name him after Shmuel Hanavi?" And the Tzemach Tzedek answered, "I named him after a special water carrier, and his name was Shmuel." And it says that a Chacham is even greater than a Navi. I think that's why the Rebbe Maharash, the Tzemach Tzedek, waited for the bris, because you cannot name after someone before they're buried. And this Reb Shmuel, whoever he was, this mysterious Reb Shmuel, had just passed away. And if I remember correctly, the Tzemach Tzedek was waiting for him to be buried, and then he able to name his son, the Tzemach Tzedek. Now, the Reb Maharash, Rabbeinu Shmuel. The Reb Maharash, I told you, was not feeling well, so he was recommended to do things with his hands. Now, you might think of some silly things you could do with your hands. So, of course, the Reb Maharash took on Safras, and he wrote many Megillas the Rebbe has. You could come to the Rebbe's library and watch and see an actual Megillah written by the Rebbe Maharash. He also made some furniture. A lot of that is lost. Apparently, probably just left in Lubavitch when they all had to leave. But there was one table that went to one of the grandchildren of the Rebbe Maharash. When the Rebbe came to France to pick up his mother, so the Rebbe came to America during the World War in 1941. But in 1947, the Rebbe went back to France. I think it's the only time the Rebbe was on an airplane, if I'm not mistaken. He went to France to pick up his mother. His mother, don't forget, was just coming from Russia. She had her own miracle, how she escaped. Her husband, unfortunately, as we know, Rebbe Lev Yitzchak passed away in Galus, in prison. So Rebbe Tzimchana afterwards finally escaped. She made it to France, and the Rebbe escorted the Rebbetzin from France back to New York. So in France, one of the grandchildren of the Rebbe Maharash, obviously a cousin of the Rebbe. The Rebbe is also a grandchild of not a grandchild. Actually, the Rebbe was the Rebbe Maharash was his great uncle, because the Rebbe, I think, comes from the Rebbe Maharash's older brother, the Shnerisons. Regardless, the Rebbe got the table. Until today, you can go into the Rebbe's Yechidus room, and there's a round table, and that round table, the Rebbe's Yechidus room, was made by the Rebbe Maharash. Okay? There's a small round table. Now, we did mention, should say Sphira, as we mentioned in last week's class, that even if you said the night before, it's best to say Sphira, just to make sure that we don't have any doubts. So we're going to say, Hayoim, Shiva, Asar, Yoim, Shehem, Shnei, Shavuos, Ushloisha, Yamim, La'omer. Today is 17 days, which is 2 weeks and 3 days to the Omer. Of course, the Sphira famously is Tiferes. Shabbat Tiferes. Just end up with a beautiful story. It was in the magazine. So it has and just show you a picture, but you won't be able to see it clearly. But the Razah and the Rebbe Rashab were young boys, and they used to play a lot. We mentioned some stories already about them. Now, one time, the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe Marash's younger son, the Rebbe Rashab, Reb Shalom Bar, asked his older brother, the Razah, Reb Zalman Aron, and he said, "What is the difference between a Yid and a Goy?" So the Razah said, "What do you mean? A Yid's much smarter, he knows Torah, and he can do mitzvahs very special." So the Rebbe Rashab thought, and he said, "Yeah, but what if a Yid doesn't know so much Torah? What if he doesn't even know any Torah? Why is he better than a Goy?" So the Razah didn't know how to answer that. So the sister went running to the Rebbe Maharash to say, "Hey, the brothers are fighting. They're not really fighting, but they don't know the." So the Rebbe Maharash calls them both over, and he says, "You want to see the difference?" So he calls over Ben Sion, the shaman. Ben Sion was like a helper around the house. He was a shaman. He helped. So he said, "Ben Sion, you ate today?" So he said, "What does it mean I ate?" No, he says, "Yeah, I ate." So he says, "You were full?" He says, "You was good?" So he says, "Yeah, Baruch Hashem, I'm full." He said, "He ate well?" He said, "What are you well? I'm full, Baruch Hashem, I'm satisfied, Baruch Hashem." He said, "Why do you eat?" He says, "What do I mean? Because I have to live." He says, "Why do you live?" So he said, "What do you mean? So because I have to serve Hashem." And then he said, a big krech. And the Rebbe once explained his cry was like I wish I was able to have, right? I wish I'd be able to do the mitzvahs correctly. So the Rebbe Marash smiled and he said, okay, thank you, you could go. Then he calls Ivan, whoa, Rabbi! Ivan, you ate today? Yeah! You ate well? Ah, very well, Rabbi! Why did you eat? What do you mean? Why? You have to be healthy. You have to live. And why do you live? So I can work. Why do you work? To make money so I could drink a good beer. So Rebbe Marash smiled and he said, thank you. And the Rebbe Marash told the Rebbe Rashab and his brother Razah, you see the difference? A Yid, his whole life, why does he live? He knows to serve Hashem. Even a simple Yid, Ben Sion doesn't know much Torah. But he knows, what's my whole life? The Eibishter. A guy, what's his life? Why do I live? So I could drink more, so I could work, so I could drink more. All right. Everyone have a wonderful day. Don't forget L'chatchila Aribin. I did tell you, I'm going to tell you what L'chatchila Aribin is. So I'll tell you a funny story. This is just what we call an anecdote. But this lady was once shopping in a store, and her little child says, Mommy, can we have that candy? And the mommy says, no, that candy isn't kosher. Now, there's this frugal lady watching, I think she was a shlucha, and she's watching this scene, and the mommy goes, oh, it's not kosher. So she looks at the lady. She didn't really look Jewish at all. So she goes, you're Jewish? So she says, no, I'm not Jewish. She says, why do you tell your daughter it's not kosher? She goes, what do you mean? Very simple. I once went shopping, when my kids went shopping, and they say, I want candy. And the mother and the kids, I want candy. And there was a whole tantrum. I once saw a Jewish lady, and her child said, I want candy. And the mommy said, but that candy's not kosher. And what happened? The child went quiet. We don't eat kosher. Okay, the child went quiet. Boom. So she said, I decided I'm going to try that trick. I told my daughter, we only eat kosher. Not that the daughter, not that the mother, not the daughter knew what it is. She said, I'll try that trick. And she said, every time her daughter complains about it, she says, oh, it's not kosher. Oh, it's not kosher. Okay? Okay, while this is a funny story, it's a very deep story. Because it teaches us what l'chatchila aribit is. Do you go under or do you go under? Over. In other words, there are certain things for you that the Yetzer Hara knows not to start up with. You're walking down the street, right? No one's going to walk in. It's Shabbos. You don't have to flick on, you don't have to argue, oh, should I flick on the line and shout? Well, hopefully you're old enough by now. I believe most of you, all you watching this are old enough by now that when you walk into the room, you say, should I turn on the line on Shabbos? Should I not turn on the line on Shabbos? You know, but yeah, don't wait, right? There are certain things that your Yetzer Hara knows not to start up with you, right? Should I eat a piece of pig today? No one thinks that today, right? I don't think anyone had a Yetzer Hara this morning for breakfast. Oh, maybe I should have a piece of pig. Oh, I'm not going to have a piece of pig. Oh, but should I? No, we're not going to have a pig. No one has to have that argument with themselves, right? Did your Yetzer Hara come to you today? Hey, let's have a piece of pig. And then you say, no, wait, I shouldn't have a piece of pig. There's no argument. You know why? Because your Yetzer Hara, like that girl that knows, kosher, it's not kosher. There's nothing to argue about because it's not going to happen, right? I hope you understand what I'm saying here. Think, and listen. What happens when mommy, you know when the candy is kosher? Do you know when you cry and complain, saying, Mommy, I want the candy? No. No, but I want it. Why did I want it? I'm not suggesting you do this, but I'll tell you when to do it. I want it. No, stop. No. Okay. Here's the candy. Now, why does that happen? Because you know deep down that if you kvetch and complain, you're going to get your way. So mommy says no, so you say yes, and mommy says no. Now that's not respectful, so I said do not do this. But we know we all do that sometimes, and I'll show you where you should do it. But, right, why do you argue with mommy? Because you know that there's a way that maybe mommy will give it. Now, maybe mommy will say, no, I'm sorry, it's not happening, goodbye. And then you'll stop arguing. But till she says, no, it's not happening, goodbye, it's like, yes, no, better not, right? See, I make that mistake with my kids. And I say, the kids, can we do this? I say, better not. So better not means then I could do it, but just better not? No, like better not. So then we could do it, just better not, right? No. Right? Until I have to say, no. So once you show there's an argument, and that's l'chatchila arunter. Should I do it? Should I not do it? There are certain things that our Yetzer Hara doesn't argue. We have no problem doing it. We won't walk on the street without a yarmulke. We won't walk on the street without nuts because there's certain things that I just can't do it, right? I just can't do it. Certain things, maybe I could do it, maybe I should do it. Like the girl with the candy. Once mommy says it's not kosher, why does a Jewish kid not ask anymore? Because there's no point in arguing. It's out of the question. We have to be lechatchila aribra yidin. Tell your Yetzer Hara, go blow, not a chance, not happening. And you'll see, there are certain things that your Yetzer Hara will never start up with you about. He won't start up with you about eating a piece of pig. He won't start up with you about a breaking Shabbos, because he knows I'm not going to start arguing. You're going to throw me out the window. You're not even going to think about it. So I'll start up with things that I know you will, like skip a few pages in davening, do a little quicker, get your brother, annoy your brother, wake up mommy. So the Yetzer Hara knows that they should tell you these things, because you know sometimes that if he nudges you a little bit enough, it's like, hey, I'll wake up mommy because I think it's important. So the idea is, lechatchila means you're a soldier. I don't want to hear you, not happening, next, boom! And let's go get him. When should you complain? What you should learn from a kid, that a kid knows that if he nudges enough, he'll get it. And that's what the Rebbe taught us. Nudge enough to Hashem, because if we nudge enough to Hashem that we want Mashiach, we have to learn from children. We all are children. And you're real children, and we sometimes adults act like children. And the Rebbe says, then act like a child and keep nudging Hashem for Mashiach, because you're right, Hashem deep down does want Mashiach, and you nudge him hard enough, he won't have any other choice but to bring it today. Amen. Don't forget to send in your answers. If you're not sure where the questions are, that would be at chabadyouth.org/virtual.